I want to open this video with a question that I know is already sitting in a lot of your minds. Can Marvel ever recreate an Endgame-level moment again? More specifically, can Avengers, Doomsday, give us that same feeling, the kind of scene that makes theaters erupt, people stand up, scream, cry, and walk out feeling like they just witnessed history? I've been thinking about this a lot, and honestly, the answer isn't as simple as a yes or no. It depends on what we actually mean when we say endgame moment. And that's exactly what I'm breaking down today. Welcome back to Filmcast Hollywood. I'm your host, Diana Harrison. And in this video, I'm diving deep into whether Marvel can truly deliver another audience-defining moment with Avengers, Doomsday, or if Endgame was lightning in a bottle that can never be replicated. I'm not here to hype blindly or doom post either. I'm here to analyze what worked, what Marvel has now, and what actually needs to happen for Doomsday to earn its place in cinematic history. First, let's clear something up. When people say, Marvel needs another Endgame moment, most of them are picturing one very specific thing: portals opening, heroes pouring in, and a decade's worth of storytelling paying off in a single roar of crowd reaction. But I think that's a misunderstanding of why that moment worked in the first place. The portal scene wasn't iconic just because it looked cool or because everyone showed up. It worked because of what led up to it. Endgame's big moment was built on more than 10 years of emotional investment. I'm talking about watching Tony Stark grow from a selfish weapons dealer into someone willing to die for the universe. I'm talking about Steve Rogers carrying the weight of leadership and loss for years. I'm talking about Natasha, Thor, Bruce, Clint, characters whose journeys the audience didn't just watch, but lived with. By the time Endgame arrived, Marvel wasn't asking us to care. We already did. On top of that, the stakes were incredibly simple. Stop Thanos or everything ends. There was no multiverse math to solve, no abstract reality logic. It was life or death, loss or survival. And finally, Endgame paid off setups that Marvel had been planting since the very beginning of the Infinity Saga. That's why the moment didn't feel like fan service. It felt like catharsis. So, when I ask whether Avengers Doomsday can recreate that, I immediately say this. If by recreate we mean doing the exact same thing again, then no. That kind of repetition would feel hollow. But if we mean creating a new moment that hits audiences just as hard emotionally, then yes, it's possible. The path to get there, however, is very different. Now let's talk about whether Doomsday even has the runway that Endgame had. From everything Marvel and the press have signaled, it's clear that Doomsday is being positioned as a true event film. The Russo brothers are back, which already tells me Marvel wants controlled chaos rather than scattered storytelling. Robert Downey Jr. returning, this time not as Iron Man but as Dr. Doom, isn't just a casting stunt. It's a statement. The release date being set in December also signals confidence. Marvel wants this to feel monumental. And then there's the ensemble angle. Fantastic Four, X-Men references, multiverse crossovers, all of that points toward a convergence movie. On top of that, the first trailer heavily highlighting Steve Rogers' return is not accidental. What really interests me is where that return seems to pick up. The implication that Avengers Doomsday could begin right where Endgame emotionally ended, Steve choosing a life with Peggy, his family and peace, sets up a powerful contrast. Endgame ended with closure. Doomsday may begin by challenging that closure. That's the runway Marvel has right now. Nostalgia, multiverse potential, and event-level marketing. But here's the reality check. Marvel doesn't have a clean, unified 10-year arc anymore. The MCU today is sprawling. Films, shows, new teams, legacy characters, variants, it's all much messier. That doesn't make a big moment impossible, but it does make it harder to focus. So why would Marvel even want to recreate an Endgame-level moment? I think there are two big reasons. First, Marvel wants casual audiences back. Let's be honest, recent phases haven't had the same cultural pull. Bringing back familiar faces like Steve Rogers and Robert Downey Jr. taps directly into emotional memory. It's comfort food for the fandom. Second, Marvel needs a punctuation mark for the multiverse saga. Avengers. Doomsday feels like it's being designed as a massive turning point, similar to how Infinity War set the stage for Endgame. It's not the finale, but it's the moment where everything shifts and the stakes become unavoidable. For Doomsday to deliver a true Endgame-type moment, certain ingredients have to come together perfectly. The first and most important one is a clear emotional spine. Endgame had two: Tony's sacrifice and Steve's closure. Without those, the spectacle wouldn't have mattered. So what could Doomsday's emotional spine be? For me, Steve Rogers is a huge part of it. If the story genuinely explores the tension between his peaceful, retired life and the call of duty, if it forces him to choose between personal happiness and saving reality, that's powerful. That's not just nostalgia, that's character conflict. Then there's Dr. Doom. Casting Robert Downey Jr. isn't enough. Doom can't just be a surprise villain with a familiar face. He needs to be an ideological threat, someone who truly believes that controlling reality is the only way to save it. Order versus freedom. Security versus choice. If Doom is written with that kind of depth, the conflict becomes emotionally sticky. But if he's just there for shock value, the entire moment collapses. The second ingredient is a unifying threat. Multiverse stories often struggle because the stakes become too abstract. Endgame worked because the loss was human. Doomsday needs to make Doom's actions feel personal. Not the multiverse might collapse, but your world, your people, your future are being rewritten. The third ingredient is a single, iconic set piece that actually means something. Endgame's portals weren't just cool visuals, they symbolized hope and unity. Doomsday needs its own equivalent. Maybe it's rival teams forced to stand together. Maybe it's an all-hope-lost moment where Doom wins completely. And then something earned, not random, shifts the tide. That shift can't feel like a cameo parade. It has to feel inevitable in hindsight. And that leads me to the biggest obstacle Marvel faces right now: cameo inflation. The multiverse era has trained audiences to expect surprise appearances every 5 minutes. The problem with that is emotional dilution. When everything is a surprise, nothing feels special. Endgame's portals hit because the characters returning were the goal of the story. We knew what their return meant. If Doomsday treats X-Men or Fantastic Four appearances as applause buttons rather than story necessities, the initial reaction might be loud, but the legacy won't last. Rewatch value matters. Emotional memory matters. Marketing-wise, it's clear Marvel is trying to engineer a moment. Theater-first strategies, controlled trailers, selective reveals, all of that builds hype. But marketing can only get people into seats. The story is what makes them remember why they stood up and cheered. So where do I land on this? My honest, evidence-based take is this. Yes, Marvel can create another Endgame-level crowd moment with Avengers. Doomsday. The pieces are there. The Russos know how to handle scale. The returns of Steve Rogers and Robert Downey Jr. carry enormous cultural weight. Dr. Doom and the multiverse provide a massive canvas. But it won't land like Endgame unless Marvel commits to 3 things. First, Doom has to be terrifying, but emotionally understandable. Second, the story needs a central hero arc that everything else revolves around. And third, the cameos have to serve the narrative, not overshadow it. Endgame wasn't magic because of what we saw. It was magic because of what we felt. If Doomsday remembers that, it doesn't need to copy Endgame. It just needs to earn its own moment. Thank you so much for watching this breakdown on Filmcast Hollywood. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel grow. And if you want to directly support our work, please consider using Super Thanks, up to $20. Every bit of support helps me bring you more in-depth film breakdowns like this. I'll see you in the next one.